Welcome to the South African Equestrian Federation's From the Horse's Mouth podcast, where we bring you the conversations that are shaping the future of our sport. Today, we are turning our focus to an exciting and much anticipated event on the calendar, the hopefully first of many International Biomechanics Symposium, hosted by Centerline Collective this May at Kailami Equestrian Park. This is going to be a 5-day gathering, bringing together world-leading experts in rider and equine biomechanics, saddle fitting, and performance science, all with a shared goal of improving how horses and riders move, train, and thrive. With a strong emphasis on practical evidence-based learning, this symposium is designed to give riders, coaches, judges, and horse owners real applicable tools to enhance performance, all while prioritizing long-term soundness and welfare. As part of the build-up to this event, I am very excited to be speaking to two of the standout presenters, international biomechanics expert Anne Muller and renowned saddle fitting specialist Amanda Anderson, to unpack what they'll be sharing and why this knowledge matters now more than ever. But these two ladies are just part of the broader world-class lineup of trainers and educators from around the globe, bringing their own unique perspectives to this immersive learning experience. So whether you are in the saddle every day, coaching from the ground, or simply passionate about doing better by your horse, this is a conversation and an event you won't want to miss. But let's get into it, and I'm going to introduce our guests for today. First up is Anne Muller. She is an internationally respected educator, trainer, and founder of Akasha College in the Netherlands, where she has spent nearly 3 decades training riders and professionals how biomechanics, behavior, and welfare intersect across all equestrian sports. Her work and the internationally acclaimed WOW framework combines rider biomechanics with equine learning theory and nervous system awareness, helping riders understand not only how to ride, but why certain patterns create relaxation or tension for both athletes, addressing the root causes of tension and miscommunication to help both athletes move with clarity, ease, and understanding. And then our saddle fitting guru today is Amanda Anderson, making it possible to identify how the saddle and equipment influences posture, muscle development, and movement patterns, allowing horses to work in comfort, reduce restriction, and develop the correct top line and strength for all disciplines. Without riders realizing it, many horses are compensating for pressure, poor saddle balance, or instability by shortening the stride, bracing the back, becoming girthy, rushing, or shutting down, creating the real reason that many people might find that training or rehabilitation seems to stall. Amanda is coming to help riders, body workers, veterinarians, and saddle fitters clearly understand where pressure is coming from, how it affects biomechanics, and what changes truly benefit the horse, replacing guesswork with clarity. So thank you both for joining us today, Anne and Amanda.
Thank you.
I'm going to have 10 questions for each of you, and then we have questions for both of you from excited spectators who are keen to see you both in action and learn from you. So, Amanda, I'm going to kick it off to you first, if you don't mind.
Of course.
And this is going to be, let's jump right into the meat of things, which is the equestrian industry worldwide obviously has a serious problem with underqualified and inexperienced saddle fitters. What is the worst pattern that you keep seeing, and why hasn't it changed?
What is the worst person?
Pattern.
Is that what? Pattern. What is the worst pattern? Well, all of my work deals with anatomy, and I try to take the guesswork out of saddle fitting. There really is no opinions. We can quantify just about everything. And I'm not talking about pressure testing or whatever. I'm talking about when it comes down to anatomical rules and biomechanics, you can literally quantify everything with anatomy. The biggest issue I see is that marketing and opinions abound. And so everybody is confused. The consumers are confused. They don't know what's going on. And how do I say it? The statement, we muddy the waters to make it appear deep. Saddle fitting is not deep. It is very much fact-based. And when you can go with facts, it becomes very easy. And so what we're going to do at the symposium is actually make this completely fact-based with saddle fitting. And so, and we do that just by teaching anatomy and biomechanics.
Amanda, how do owners know if their saddle fitter is up to the job? And I'm not saying this to badmouth anyone, but a
Sure.
lot of owners are obviously incredibly uneducated and they're relying on a professional, and these waters are muddied. What is a good sign that you're speaking to a really capable, confident fitter?
So they have to know anatomy. And I feel like the pitfall is when I go to the doctor, I assume that my doctor
Yes,
knows anatomy and knows medicine because there is a licensure that they have to go through, right? They have to they go through medical school, they go through testing, and then they have to do continuing education for in order to practice medicine. And make no mistake, saddle fitters are healthcare providers, even though they are not
that's
licensed.
lovely. Mm,
So the issue becomes that there is no standardized testing, and the saddle fitting schools have no criteria that they have to adhere to. And so that puts the impetus on the consumers that they have to know at least the basics, right? They have to know what muscle the saddle can go on, they have to know what muscle the saddle can't go on, and then they have to have a good criteria for fit that they and their saddle fitter agree on, which can be quite extensive or not. I feel like the best saddle fitters have quite an extensive criteria for fit. And that is based again on anatomy, biomechanics, and of course, the horse's comfort. But consumers have to know this because it's
true.
basically the Wild West. And we want to really give, in this symposium, I really want to give consumers the tools to ask the saddle fitters, are you actually any good?
Great. I think that's really valid, and I would be a fan of not being in the Wild West anymore.
Same.
Um,
I'd love for that standardized. I'd
uh,
love for a standardized licensure for sure.
Anne, I'm coming to you now. You've spent nearly 30 years watching riders. What's the most common thing riders do that they genuinely believe is helping their horse, but isn't?
Well, everyone supposedly is doing their utmost best, but I can almost double Amanda's answer that people are really in the Wild West about getting advices about how to ride a horse. And the problem is, might be that if you go to a doctor, there is this education that is fitted for making a doctor a good doctor. But when I look at the courses for instructors and trainers, um, I don't think they are sufficient enough to get instructors really knowing how to work with biomechanics instead of having their own opinions. And it's the same in working with a rider as in the saddle. There is a lot of stuff already clear about learning theory and about biomechanics and how physics work. But not everybody is yet into that. There's, yeah, a group of people do not want to change, I think, because it has been so and we won prizes, etc. But there are a lot of instructors doing their own idea, using their own method. And I think it's because it sells. I'm different, so I'm better and I do stuff this and that. Because I'm different, I'm better, and I want you to buy my package, things like that.
Mm.
And the same goes for the seed, that I would like to see it more objectively judged and looked at it as bones and muscles working together, and how you prepare your body to talk and work with the horse instead of against it.
I really love that because I do think there's this, and we often see it's in every country. It's a global problem, I think, with equestrians, where the horse is perceived as being the athlete. And I know that the FEI has recently made a change to make sure that we don't talk about riders and horses. We talk about athletes and horses in all of their writing. And I think that's a really interesting mental shift, which is what you're saying, is that we have to start looking at the riders as being athletes and training them as athletes, not just on personal experience and opinion.
Yeah, give them more data, more science, more. There has been a lot of research about what riders are doing, high-level riders. What do they do, and are they doing it in the most optimal way? It's not research. What is the most optimal seat is not wrapped in a package yet. And we know that if you work with gravity, you can't change physics. So I think it's really simple, but they make it really muddy waters.
Yeah. Gravity is a pivotal part of horse riding. And I think there's a lovely phrase that says, if you aren't a humble person, gravity will make you one. So, but yes. And then for Amanda and Anne, Amanda, maybe you want to answer this first, and then Anne. What does ethical training actually look like? Somebody asks. And how far is the mainstream industry from it right now?
Oh, so I can't speak about.
So when I say
speak
training,
about training.
I think they
saddle
ask
fitting.
holistically. You know, when we
Sure.
talk about ethics, I think in the greater biosphere.
Sure. So in saddle fitting, ethics is, we're trying to put it back into the industry for sure. The rub is, when I speak to other saddle fitters, they say, I would love to do what you're teaching, Amanda, which is you only fit the healthy horse. We only ride healthy horses, but the reality is people are going to ride because they're paying for it. And that is the rub. And so what we're trying to do is educate riders and of course veterinarians too, who might pass a horse because they're obligated to, because they're being paid. Saddle fitters who are obligated to fit a saddle to a horse because they know that the rider is just going to go and ride anyway. And so I feel like what I'm trying to do, and of course the people who think like me, is we're trying to instill or at least educate riders to understand what is healthy and what is not. Because truly, we can really only ride a healthy horse ethically. This is not World War I, World War II, where, you know, the horse may have been injured on the march to battle. And if you don't ride that horse to battle, you know, you're going to die. This is, we're in a luxury sport here. So, but, you know, people don't necessarily want to hear that. But if I'm really afraid that we're going to lose our sport if we don't.
I was going
there's
to
a
say,
huge,
what are the long-term ramifications of not complying with ethics? And that is it. We're going to lose.
We're going to lose our sport. Yep. And if we lose our sport, the issue becomes, you know, then the bar is lowered. So we have all these professional athletes that are doing, you know, great things, and people look up to them. But what happens when they're no longer there? The bar lowers, and then we get into, you know, people who have no higher level to go to.
And they're not being
and it
held
scares me.
accountable by that high performance. Yeah.
As much as they're not super holding them accountable anyway. But yes, we're trying to raise it. So
another discussion.
Discussion.
And can I ask you, what does ethical training actually look like? And how far away is the industry from it?
If you look to the left, there's a lot going wrong. But if you look to the right, even metaphorically spoken almost, then a lot of is happening and getting people reaching out to and getting more knowledge. What we see over 6,000 years, we rode horses on pressure, on strength, on dominance, on you have to do what I say because I'm boss. And I think if we use learning theory in a package with biomechanical insights, that you can come to a situation, I've seen it, been there, done it, worked with riders, saw the difference that if instead of giving the horse commands, the rider, any level, is starting to ask questions and looking at the answers of the horse, and if the answer was not what they would love to see, then you have to change the answer and not the horse. And for me, that's all about ethics, because then you are, if you put pressure and strength on, therefore, I think it's a little bit dangerous to talk about athletics. If you are an athlete, then you are supposed to be strong. And if I need force and
Interesting.
strength to ride my horse, something is definitely off.
Mm.
So if we can change that point of view, from instead of making the horse doing what you want him to do, ask him. There's a big change in the horse's communication with you at the same moment. When you start asking and start rewarding at the precise moment, it gets clear for the horse. They are mentally more stable. There's the difference. And then I give my horse as much as the same credits as I give another human being, because it is a sentient being. He can feel pain, he can feel emotions, and we are responsible of taking care of that, because we know now for sure. It has been proven that horse has feelings and emotions and suffering, and but he can also be happy. It's not all black. We can do it, but I think we're halfway.
It's a hard conversation, and I think of there's a lot of conversations about adults, parents who now have adult children, and when their children have a choice not to have a relationship with them anymore, suddenly they say, "Oh, my children don't visit me." You know, why don't? And I think
Mhm.
it's so interesting if we do the same with our horses. If our horses really had a choice, what would we be the horse's
Yeah.
choice? And I think
Right.
that ties in beautifully to your answer, Anne. Thank you.
Well,
Um,
I think there's a saying that Andrew McLean uses, the one of the ISIS founders.
he's great.
He always says, "Is the bird sitting on your hand because he wants to sit on your hand, because it's nice, or is he sitting on your hand because you tied him down?"
Yeah, you applied
There's this
super glue.
difference.
Yeah. And what happens the second he has the choice to fly away? I think that's always the interesting, the and
Yeah,
heartbreaking.
then he
It's
flies.
heartbreaking. It's not a nice conversation for riders to be having. And same with you, Amanda. It's hard for riders to have
Mhm.
that conversation about going, I've maybe been doing the wrong thing, not through any intent, but it's and change is hard. It's so hard. That's but
It, well, it was not wrong.
mm,
We've been taught this way. They told us to do it like that,
mm,
and we did not know better. So we weren't wrong. We just have to accept there's new information,
yeah,
and better information, and more researched information that we can really count on. Like Amanda says, everything can be measured.
mm.
And also with the effect of the rider in the saddle on the horse, the reins, everything can be measured now.
Um,
So
yeah.
we were
Sorry.
not wrong. We have to just um, learn some extra stuff.
Absolutely. Amanda, to come back to you,
Mhm.
you've done equine necropsies,
Yes.
and that's as quantifiable as it gets. What does that actually show you about how horses have been ridden and fitted that riders would never see from the outside of the horse?
We find a lot of damage that is not available for imaging at this current time. We typically, so necropsy means it's different than dissection. Dissection is taking apart a horse solely for research.
Mm,
And we definitely do research on the horses that come into the clinic for necropsy. But necropsy is more of a fact finding. The horse has come into us because they're too painful to live. We would never do this to a horse that could live and be pasture sound and happy. And so we do all of the imaging that we can to try to figure out what's going on with the horse prior to, unfortunately, having to euthanize it. And when we get them on the table, it's incredible how much more we can't image. My job is saddle fit research for every horse, because every horse is obviously a ridden horse that comes to us. And what One of the reasons why I was hired to do this was because anatomy is my thing, and that's how I base all of my training and fittings on. And I realized that what we're being taught in the saddle schools, and sometimes even veterinarian manuals, is not correct any longer. And so what we're teaching saddle fitters now and future saddle fitters and riders and trainers is actually incorrect. We've been selectively breeding horses for over 100 years, and there has been some substantial evolutionary changes based on that selective breeding that absolutely affect not only saddle fit, but the health of the horse, how we should be riding them, and how we should be training them. And it's we're all a bit scared. It's not to say that we shouldn't ride horses. I think horses should absolutely be ridden, and they enjoy being ridden when they're healthy. I just think that we need to understand how important it is to adhere to anatomical and biomechanical rules when it comes to fitting saddles and riding them.
And you're seeing that in these necropsies from these chronically pathological horses, the saddle fit had quite a contributing factor to that pain.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. Without being cheeky, although I am cheeky, there is one specific saddle design that we see consistently coming through not only the rehab facility, but also through the necropsies. And that is saddles that have a very narrow pommel and very short tree points. They just do so much damage to the horse's shoulders. And unfortunately, the part of the shoulder that the saddle touches is cartilage. And if you're 50 or older, or even maybe 40 or older, you know that cartilage does not regenerate. My knees.
That's like a personal attack, Amanda.
It is a personal attack. I mean, my knees, like you can hear me walking down the stairs. I cannot creep up on anyone. And, you know, the front of the saddle, which is the pommel and the tree point, sits right next to the cartilage. And once that's damaged, it's damaged. And once that's damaged, the horse it's this chain of events, it's downward spiral. And so, you know, right now it's, the narrow pommel and short tree points are very common in jump saddles. And that's being promoted as freedom for the shoulder, but it's absolutely not. And I could sit here and talk for an hour about why anatomically and biomechanically that's incorrect. And it's interesting because when I asked the brands that sell them or the fitters that sell them, I said, look, I will pay you $1,000 to debate me about short tree points. And you can use 10,000 of my necropsy pictures to prove your point, and nobody will take it.
Okay, that's interesting. And to come back to you, first of all, can you introduce the WOW framework?
The WOW framework?
Yes.
WOW. Well, that started when I became an ISIS member, 2011, and it evolved when in 2016 the board of ISIS, International Society for Equitation Science, asked anyone in this room, researchers, practitioners, is there anyone who can make a translation of the 10 ISIS principles into a program for novice riders and children, and just really explaining the basics of welfare and learning theory. And I was there with Machteld van Dierendonk. She's a clinical ethologist. And because I'm a practitioner, I need a scientific supervisor on those projects. And we are tied together for the rest of our lives. We became friends, and our talking never stops. And so together I can design the drawings. That was not a problem. But with the 10 ISIS, they are very precise about the language we use and what we exactly say, and didn't it change the meaning of what we wanted to say in the original 10 ISIS principles. So there it started that we made a program for children, and 2 years later we also made a poster, a very big poster for the worldwide competition that ISIS gave us, the opportunity they gave us. And yeah, we won that one because it's totally scientifically based, but you can explain children learning theory in a very simple way.
That's fantastic,
And
because that's really where we stand the potential to change most about the sport is with children.
well, if you want to change, if you really want to change, it will take not just a moment, it will take generations.
Mm.
And if we start now, we'll still have people who do the old stuff in 2 or 3 generations. But I think it's wise to start now,
Mm. So,
and also nice for the horses to start now.
yeah.
We teach the learning theory to children in with 10 very simple words, and I can do them very fast in Dutch, but I do have to think when I'm doing it in English. The words are very simple. A horse can say yes, but a rider can also say or do yes. A horse can also say and is allowed to say no. When the horse says no, something is the matter. The children can also, or the rider can also say, no, we stop because there's a road crossing and I want you to stop doing what you're doing right now. Point. That must be safety stuff. If you use an aid, you asking the horse, hey, can you do this or that?
Mm.
And the horse can also say to you, hey, I don't understand you. Hey, I understand you. Hey, can you get off? That's a nice one, I think, sometimes. But I really love horses at 10 points. Yeah,
Yeah.
bam. Okay, you were right, guy. Good horse. Good boy. Yes, hey, and no are the small words where I train children. If you use a leg aid, begin small and say, hey. And as soon as the horse reacts, make your legs go to yes instead of pinch. Just get them out of there. And you can also say no with your seat, for example, or slow down with your seat. Hey, slow down. And if you learn to do the slow down, the half halts on your seat, then you are not using your reins at that moment. You have contact reins. I agree on contact reins. I love the contact to really be in my fingers and in my body. But you don't have to pull the reins to slow the horse down because you got a different way of communication, the question. So they can say yes, hey, no. They can also say oops when they're
I
scared,
like that.
or I get it, or wow, this is really nice. They can also say ouch. And the last one is chill. And all those words we can also apply to riders. It's the most simple system I could think of, and it works in about 10 riding schools now. We have instructors working after doing our programs, and everybody is so fond with it because it's so clear. Because when you see a rider asking with their legs, hey, yes, hey, yes, hey, yes, you can explain why not, why that is
Mm.
not working and
Yeah.
what will be working. And then the attitude of the horses, I love it. They start
Aren't they
teaching with
wonderful? They're
you.
such wonderful mirrors.
Oh, they're so wonderful. They are my colleagues. They are the
Um,
best colleagues ever got, and they're always right. It is
yeah.
our fault if something is going wrong. There's no way that the horse is doing a thing wrong. He's just doing what's asked, or something is wrong in his body,
I love
mentally,
that.
physically. Yeah.
So
So
this
that's the wow frame.
so this has won an international prize, but real change in the industry is still slow. So what's actually blocking that change, in your opinion?
Well, because a lot of people have a lot of great ideas, and there are so many great ideas that not this one is just picked up. We've got the internet now. 20 years ago, we got books, and then you wrote a book and you got famous. Now everybody writes books, and there are a lot of free internet courses, and so there's so much information, but also from the researchers and the scientists, they there is so much more research now than there was 20 years back. So there's this big pile of information, and yeah, you get lost in that.
I think that's a valuable thing about any online information. We are inundated from all sides with it. So that's, I think, such a valuable commentary on social media and internet in general. And then
But
I'm
it's
coming back.
also, if I may,
Yes.
it's also that I've been making a program for the KNHS, the sports organization in the Netherlands, about learning theory, about ethology. But they are, let's say, a bit slow in introducing it. It took already 5 years, and I'm still waiting.
It's the at the corporate level, things always take a while to roll out.
Yeah.
Amanda and Anne, this is actually a question for both of you from Haley, who is the mastermind behind the Biomechanics Symposium. She says, you're both coming to South Africa. What do you hope the South African equestrian community is doing well? Seeing as in South Africa, we're in a limbo of not being on the world stage, and we're still able to create real change before the spotlight is on us in the same way that it is in Europe and the United States. Amanda, do you want to answer first?
Yeah, I hope that South Africa is sticking to the traditional saddle fit. It's interesting. People say, well, we have all this technology, we have all these pressure testing, we have all this, stuff that we can do to create better saddle fit. And what I see being in the United States and Europe is that even though we have all this technology, we are fitting saddles worse than ever before. And
I don't know if that's depressing or
I know.
That's something.
Well, right. It is a little bit. I mean, yes, it's not just saddle fitting. It's also the breeding and the demographics change with who is the most common adult amateur rider, et cetera, et cetera. But also with international marketing, right? So it used to be that saddlers would make saddles for the horses in their area. It was a relatively closed gene pool because people were not shipping horses and semen, internationally. And so they had a greater expertise on the horses that they had in their area. They were known by their reputation. And if they didn't do a good job, they couldn't feed their families. And so now it's very much a hands-off thing where, you get a saddle made in India and they're shipping it to the States, and it doesn't matter to them whether or not the saddle fits well or even if the design is good. And the saddle fitters who are in the field are not talking with the saddlers making the saddles, and the saddlers making the saddles are not talking with the people who are designing the saddles. And so we've kind of come to this issue where saddles are being marketed. They're very niche, like this saddle will solve all of your problems. This saddle will solve all of your problems. Well, I have bad news. No saddle will solve any of your problems. It's just going to make things go well. So I'm hoping that South Africa is more tradition based and relying on what the horse wants and actually looking at the horses and going, all right, this horse is comfortable. Why? Why is this horse comfortable? And then using the scientific method to go, okay, well, we have an open pommel. We've got tree points that fit. We've got a tree that fits. We've got a rider who's in balance and fit. And so that's really what I'm hoping for.
That's lovely. I'm hoping you see that.
Me too.
And then, Anne, what do you hope the South African equestrian
Well,
community is
I
doing
was
well.
going to ask that question to you. Well,
I'm
or do
waiting.
I hope?
No, I'm waiting for you to come here and tell us. That's why we want you here.
Yeah, I'm coming. I booked my ticket already,
Good.
so no problem. I'm coming. Um, what I hope to see is small changes, because I believe that even a butterfly can start a storm, and it won't happen fast. I I don't want to put my hopes up too high, because I think people are people all over the world, and change is sometimes hard if you feel guilty. And I want people
Oh,
not to feel guilty,
that's great.
because then you're busy with being guilty.
Yeah.
Let's start just sitting on your horse and making balance, so that if Amanda gives them a nice saddle and I'll give them a nice seat, that we make somebody happy. And some horses will then maybe the day after think, wow, what
Yay.
happened? Where have you been? That would be nice.
So you want thank you letters from the horses in South Africa. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, Amanda, we're coming back to you.
Okay.
What piece of knowledge do you feel most passionately about that most vets, trainers, and coaches still don't know but should?
Wither clearance, 100%.
Okay.
In my research, both with saddle fitting and necropsies, and then working with the vets at the research facility and rehab facility that I'm at, I would say wither clearance is one of the things that most people don't understand. And when I say most people, I mean riders, veterinarians, trainers, body workers. And it's interesting because in the books that I read, which are all fairly old, not saddle fitting books, wither clearance is the number one rule in saddle fitting. And without taking up too much time, the structures in the withers govern whether the horse can perform correctly, and also whether the horse is comfortable, but almost more importantly, whether the horse can lay down to sleep or sleep comfortably. I believe it's called the Geneva Conventions, where they list what war crimes actually are. And well, and sleep deprivation for prisoners is number one and chief among them. And we see quite a lot of horses who have sleep deprivation, sleep collapse.
That's crazy.
And and these horses are not sleeping for months to years. And I follow this saddle fitting page, this Facebook page. It's called Sleep Deprivation. And it's heartbreaking, the number of people who don't realize that their horse is collapsing because they can't sleep because it's too painful. Part of the stay apparatus, which is what allows the horse to sleep standing up and lock its knees, is in the withers. And also the scapula and the scapular cartilage are in the withers. And so if you don't have wither clearance, you can really damage not only the stay apparatus, but make it impossible or very hard for the horse to be comfortable laying down to sleep. And so I mean, that's just one thing in the withers that is so important for the horses.
I'm finding this just
to be
also so
comfortable.
interesting, because you get these, I don't want to say like old wives' tales or rules, but like there are a lot of, you used the word tradition earlier. And one of the things that's, your older trainers, you've always heard them say is your horse should lie down to sleep.
Yes.
And it's such a,
Has to.
it's so, you just start not thinking about it, like Anne was saying, we just do things like that because that's how they should be done. And knowing that we've been doing something right, that is a good piece of traditional knowledge. But why is it? And that's such a great, it's great to think of that.
Yeah. Yeah. We know, like the thing that I teach off of most, which is animal management, which was written by the UK vets in between World War I and World War II. They didn't know, because it hadn't been discovered yet, that part of the stay apparatus is located inside the pommel. But they knew that if the saddle pinched the withers, that it would imperil the horse's knees, the safety of the knees. And they knew that based on, I don't know, millions of horses that they had to draw their knowledge from. But now we've proven it. In 2008, they found the part of the stay apparatus that's called the dorsoscapular ligament that's located in the withers. And I think it's just really neat that traditionally they knew, and we've lost that because riders want a narrow pommel. It's more comfortable for them, and they want short tree points, which it's more comfortable for them. And we've lost it based on marketing. Let's just sell this saddle. Let's make it rider comfort. So I'm excited to bring that back. I'm excited to talk to riders and trainers and veterinarians and saddle fitters and be like, look, we've lost this knowledge. Let's bring it back, because otherwise, the horses are not comfortable, and it's horse welfare for sure.
That's great. Anne, back to you. You started apparently in neurolinguistic programming and self-development before moving into horses and letting them consume your life as they do. How many of the difficulties in equestrian sport is a people problem versus a horse problem, in your opinion?
All of it.
Love that. And I knew that this was going to be a short answer. So I had a part two,
Yeah.
for you, which is, how do we shift
There was
that?
never a foal born aggressively, isn't it? Yeah, that's the shortest answer. And I think for us trainers, if you are schooled in neurolinguistic programming or any great kind of communication program, you are more able to explain in an objective way. You know the difference between fake and something you can really touch and see and feel, and more objective information. But you can also hear the difference or hear the little gaps in somebody's communication when they say something, but they mean something different. It really helps me as an instructor to hear more than the words that are spoken. Does that help?
I love that. Anyone, when you ask someone how they're doing and they say, I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm fine.
And you go, that's not fine.
Yeah.
There's problems coming. The second part of that question, because I was anticipating, I know, whenever my horse has a bad day, I take it very personally. But how do we shift that mindset that it's a problem horse, it's a bad horse, it's a difficult horse?
Well, gee, the difficult horses I have seen all have a physical problem, because the mental problems you can usually help solving. We retrain the horse with a lot more clarity, then we can get them to do a lot of more stuff than they could do before. But when there's a physical problem, then you don't have a difficult horse, you have a horse in pain. And they'll be difficult because they are in pain. So if a horse is misbehaving in our eyes, in our opinion, you should go to your vet and ask for, maybe do a test with painkillers. Does the behavior changes when the horse gets painkillers? Can he fall asleep, lie down with painkillers? If not, then there's something else going on. And then you have to do the whole program with scans and stuff, find out what's happening, or leave the horse to the pasture. And if it's not fine enough to be in the pasture, then we should take the responsibility to put the horses down at the good time, not after they've been suffering for years. I hope they do that to me too. That would be nice.
I read a lovely thing the other day that said we should rather euthanize our horses a week too early than a day too late.
Yes.
And I think you used the word guilt earlier on, and let's call it what it is. Change is hard because it's admitting we've done something wrong. We've fitted a narrow saddle with short tree points because it's comfortable for us, to our horse's detriment. and the guilt that comes with it is so difficult. But I think both of you hopefully are going to be offering people a lot more objectivity. And I think, as you've both said, taking that muddy water out is going to be really helpful, I think, to people wanting to learn. Amanda, back to you.
Mhm.
And on this topic that we were just discussing, how often is behavioral resistance actually a saddle problem in disguise? And how can riders tell the difference?
When you say behavioral resistance, okay, I gotcha. It just computed in my brain. Okay, so
Bad
going
horse,
on,
rearing, it doesn't want
bad
to
horse,
go.
yes,
Bad horse.
bad horses, yes. So I find that, just like we were saying, horses are generally not bad; they're misunderstood, or they lack boundaries, right? So like a child without boundaries, they can
True.
be bad because they have bad behaviors. And you can certainly have some of that. But again, it's hard to answer that and say, okay, X amount of horses, the percentage of horses have this. And when people come to the symposium, I'm going to teach them, is it a behavioral issue or is it a saddle issue? What I want to do is allow not just a veterinarian or a trainer or another saddle fitter. I want the rider to be able to look at
Yes.
their horse and literally figure out exactly what the anatomy is and exactly how their saddle is fitting so that they can take that out of the equation. The only thing a saddle fitter can do is fit the horse anatomically based on anatomy and biomechanics. And so if that saddle fits anatomically and the rider biomechanically, and the horse is still being behavioral, then you can take saddle out of that equation. There's a lot, like we said in the beginning, there's a lot we can't image. I always operate from the thought that no horse is intentionally being bad. They are either in pain or they have no idea what's going on. You think about humans, generally, humans who are feeling good and their hormones are fine and they're eating well and they're relatively fit are pretty easygoing. When a woman goes through menopause or a teenager is going through puberty or you have someone who doesn't eat well,
Or a man's got a
that's
cold.
right. I mean, they have the behavioral breaks, right? We see the
Yeah.
mental illness come up. And so I think humans and horses are quite similar. And one of the disservices we've done to horses is saying, all right, well, mental illness is normal, or being unhealthy is normal, or even portraying unhealthy as healthy in the
Yes,
human industry.
normalizing unhealthiness.
Right.
Mm.
We have definitely done that with humans in order to make people feel better about themselves. And it's come over into the horse industry. Well, that horse is just girthy. She's just a jerk, or,
Yes, the
oh,
thing.
that she's oh right, a bitch, or oh, it's just a chestnut horse.
Yeah.
As a redhead myself, yes, we can be a bit spicy, but I'm only spicy when I
But
don't feel well. Right. But like I feel like I'm very easygoing when I feel well. And as someone who's recently starting to go through menopause, the first like 4 years of being ignored by my doctor until I went to a doctor who was like, "Hey, you need hormones," and I'm like, "Yeah."
yes,
And right, but it's taken now 2 years for me to get better. But now I feel like, I feel great now. I'm
yeah.
back to my old self. And we need to take that and be like, look, your horse is either
And your horse
obese
can't say
or
that. Your horse can't say
right,
yes, please. Well, it
not
is
in
saying
English,
it.
right, or whatever
And
your
with us,
language
the
is.
horse is saying it. We're not, but
Right.
we're waiting for it to tell us in English.
Exactly. It's not good. So I'm going to provide the framework for the riders, veterinarians, body workers, trainers to learn that. Also, another thing too is what I find, at least here in the States, is the veterinarians are very much looking at the legs. But what moves the legs? The body.
Yeah.
And what do we ride? The body and the back. And,
Yeah.
at least here in the States, again, 60% of, I believe it's 60% of the reason why people call out of work is back pain. And we haven't even introduced a saddle or a rider or a girth to the humans. Yeah. So yeah.
And we've got so much imaging now for legs. And Amanda, before I hop over to Anne, you've mentioned it, speaking now several times, that the saddle fits the horse and it fits the rider.
Has to fit the rider.
And I think that's such a great thing, because I know several saddle fitters talk about riders not pitching for saddle fittings, or the work rider pitches for a saddle fitting and not the normal rider.
Correct.
Just on a scale of 1 to 10, I don't want to, because you're obviously going to discuss this at the symposium.
Yeah.
How important is saddle, if you find the perfect fitting saddle for your horse, but not for yourself? Is it going to work?
Oh, it doesn't work. No. Okay. I would say that the rider is 95% of the saddle fit, for sure.
Wow.
Because, yeah. So I don't know if I was on another podcast or I just made this I don't remember when I said this, but I do a bit of hiking. And we're actually training to do Kilimanjaro next year, which I'm super excited about. And I realized, it's a $30,000 trip. And so I am not going to mess this up. I've been training for the last 6 months, and I went to get my backpack professionally fitted. And they said, we're going to fit you with this, but you have to go and walk around the block. And they've got like a little training area for it so that I can make sure that I'm comfortable. And when I put it on with no weight, no supplies in it, I was like, oh, this is great. He's like, but wait, let me load it first.
But wait, there's more.
And right, there's a lot more. And he's like, you're going to have to carry X amount of pounds for 8 or 9 days, 12 hours a day. That's pretty serious. And you have to not only have to be able to carry that weight, but you have to load it appropriately, right? You've got to load the heaviest stuff close to your center of gravity. And then we just say to riders like, oh, well, you can just ride however you want and you can be whatever weight you want. And we just do this basic like 20% rule, which is not valid anymore. The 20% rule for horses was based on the cavalry and fit horses, fit riders, based on the total amount of weight they were going to carry for that day and still be able to make it into battle. If you pull a horse out of the pasture who maybe does 30 minutes a day, twice a week, they're not going to be able to carry 20% of their ideal body weight. And they're probably not at ideal body weight.
And it's not war. They shouldn't have
It's not war.
We're asking them to be athletes.
Right. Yeah. Right. So we go back to the backpack thing. It's like, if your rider is not balanced and symmetric and staying with the horse over the center of gravity, then they're basically a backpack that doesn't fit well. And if the horse is not fit, like if I don't do my due diligence and train for Kilimanjaro, then I'm not going to be able to make it to the summit. And I actually might have an injury or an emergency that can be, shouldn't happen. And so the horse has to be fit enough to carry the rider, and the rider has to be balanced and cognizant of their deficiencies. And so it's just like that. The saddle is incredibly important to both of them, but they also have to do their due diligence.
I love that analogy, and you'll enjoy this as well. There's a woman who's talking about, she went to go and try a Grand Prix horse in Holland, and she said, this is the best horse in the world, and I'm riding it like a haunted backpack. And I thought that was such a great. I've got a 9-year-old, and if you've ever tried to carry a willful, unhappy 9-year-old anyway, you will. I have a renewed sympathy for my horse. It's the worst thing in the world.
I feel like my mare thinks that with me sometimes.
And to come to you, what is one of the biggest things that coaches, trainers, and judges are still getting consistently wrong? And what would your message to them be directly?
I missed the middle part of your question.
What is the thing what is the biggest thing that you think coaches, trainers, and judges are still getting consistently wrong? And what would your advice to them be?
I think that's a hard question.
Because we're doing a lot wrong?
Well, Yeah, it comes back to the answer I gave earlier, that you should ride ethically without the idea that we must make the horse do something. And they do not see the difference. They're not, they haven't opened their eyes yet to see the difference between commanding and asking riders. And if I look at a Grand Prix test, for example, and there are nice riders, yeah, but still I can, um, when those spurs are moving into the horse's belly, every step of a half pass or any exercise, they are keeping, um, asking, and the horse is doing it, but that's not the communication we would like to work towards,
Mm.
and they do not recognize it yet. I think it should be
Do you
better.
think that the way that's dressage is being judged is important for the change that we're going to see in and
Yeah,
I'm using
yeah,
okay.
absolutely, absolutely.
So
If
there's
they
quite an
start
onus
judging,
on
the riders will do what the judges want to see.
we're
I
going to do
think
what's
the
rewarded.
judges are boss, and if they change, everything will change overnight,
Mm,
directly. If all the judges are starting to stop giving high points for excessive movements,
mm,
then we won't see excessive movements
mm,
anymore. And maybe then we have a little bit less people on the buying tickets to see the tests. That could be, but we won't lose our sports. And that's
what
losing the sport. I think it's a high price to pay, because horses mean so much to so many people, way far more beyond all this sport stuff.
mm,
And if you forbid horseback riding for sports, then it will be forbidden for everyone. And then I wouldn't have had the life I have been living now. And horses gave me a lot. And I would love to see my granddaughter maybe later, to, yeah, that she can do the same stuff and make the same connection, because it's very valuable. And I train people to become better people, and that's nice, because when they start looking at the horse and getting um, um, his signals, taking those seriously, and started to talk, because the horse tells me something, and I give an answer, and I question, and it goes back and forth. Then you talk about communication and connection.
yes.
That's a thing we also lose. Um, then we, yeah, I think that's clear.
I think it's if you think about what our collective marks are on dressage tests, it would be so interesting to give a more weighted mark for harmony to try and quantify that, the communication between horse and rider. And when those collective marks become expensive, or when relaxation is prioritized, I agree with you. I think the sport will start,
Yeah.
that's when we'll see meaningful change.
Are you thinking about the thing I said about the pro horse performance protocol now?
Yes, yes, pro horse
Well,
performance protocol. I love that.
it's a very frustrating project,
Yeah.
because people don't want to see or don't want to listen, or we've been working on it for 6 7 years now, making objective visuals and score them as objective as possible for rhythm, regularity, back movement, head positions, stress signals, everything that's on the scales of training, on the training scales, on the German training
Yes.
scales, but also the influence of the rider. And you can use this protocol as a shadow judging, or make your own competition, or,
Nice.
but I'm still looking for a partner that is able to digitalize this with me in a way that everybody can use it. So that's a hard project, but it's really
It's going to be an
a
exciting one.
project I believe in it. I really
Yeah.
believe in it because it can change the view of a judge.
At the World Breeding Federation for Sport Horses, we hosted it in South Africa towards the end of last year. So we had 70 nations coming to represent their breeds. They were talking about and I'm just slightly going off track, we're going to carry on immediately, about AI judging dressage. And people were obviously feeling very strongly about it. And they were saying we'll be able to quantify cadence, we'll be able to quantify regularity and rhythm. And so I think there are interesting things coming in that space.
Well, unavoidable. It will come.
It will come.
And we do hope that this AI, it starts with machine learning, of course. You have to teach AI what he's going to measure or what cadence is good and what one is out of regularity. But if this AI is not taught in the right way, then also, again, products will be released which will say they are very horse friendly and they're not. So I really hope that as much scientists as possible will be engaged in this developing this AI judging system.
I think also
it's not a question of if it will come, it will come.
It will. We can either go with it or get left behind. I think what Amanda, what you and Anne have spoken about, which I think is hard but fantastic, is the responsibility and accountability that we all have. It's not handing it over to our trainer and it's not handing it over to our saddle fitter. It's actually being a part of the process. And I think that's, like I said, it's kind of horrifying, but we need to feel quite empowered by it, hopefully.
Why is it so horrifying?
And why do you... It's that word guilt that you use, and that I think is so interesting. And I think it is. It's hard for people.
It's a waste of time to think about that one. Just learn more, that's all.
Be better.
It's a waste of time to think about what you have been doing, explain to your trainer what you are doing. You're in a training session, so use your trainer. A lot of people try to explain, yeah, I'm doing it because, and somebody told me, and
defending
it's all a waste of time. Just start doing the better stuff. That's all. It's quite simple.
When there's
clear
that
your head, loosen
better,
up.
you do better. There's a question here from a potential attendee. Amanda, if you want to start, where do you see the biggest disconnect between science and what's actually happening in everyday riding and training?
I would love to address independent studies. So the majority of independent studies going on nowadays between tax sellers love to do independent studies. And that's kind of the byword now, that the tagline that saddle fitters, saddle companies like to use. Well, an independent study said this, XYZ is the number one or whatever.
It's like people who do their research on YouTube.
Right. So, like independent studies are great, but as someone who works for a rehab and research facility, and we actually do testing and whatnot, when a tack company or saddle fitter or wherever comes in and says, we would like you to independently test our product, because they pay for it, they get to dictate the parameters that you test the product. They get to dictate the sample size, how many times that experiment is performed, and then they own the material that gets published. And so what I'm finding is that, excuse me?
That's so interesting.
Yeah. Well, they do, fortunately, to this day, they still publish who pays for the study, the sample size, the parameters for it, et cetera, et cetera. One of my least favorite independent studies involves a girth, an anatomic girth. And the sample size was quite small. And they claimed that the having the girth gap in the front, meaning if you look down between the horse's front legs, you'll see the girth gapping, that taking all the pressure off of the pectoralis muscles, which absolutely do move the forelimb, and putting it on the xiphoid cartilage would provide better range of motion for the horse's forelimbs. This is absolutely true. And that sounds amazing. Like, why would we not want to increase the range of motion of our horse's forelimbs? However, when I spoke to the people that did this, they were like, I said, did you perhaps test the horse's breathing? Because when we put the pressure on the xiphoid cartilage, which is on the caudal end of the sternum, that is actually attached to the diaphragm. And it's this, for the horse, it's a cartilaginous piece that's about the size of your palm. It kind of looks like a round, like a triangle. And it's supposed to flex outward when the horse takes a deep breath. That allows the diaphragm to expand. If we put the girth pressure on that, it inhibits the horse's breathing. That was never tested in the independent study. But the horse absolutely had a better range of motion for however long that study went, which was one ride. So this is the biggest disconnect that I can think of. People go, oh, it was independently studied. Well, that's nice. Who paid for it? Oh, well, the girth seller paid for it. So
and we're never going to release bad data.
Of course not. Why would we? I mean, so because someone's got to pay for that, right? So unless you can get somebody who has no skin in the game, so to speak, and they just want to know what's the best, the consumers are going to be baffled with, what do I say, bullshit. They're baffled with bullshit. And this is where I go back to the traditional stuff before we had internet marketing, before things were being sold mass production to consumers. Again, I go back to my Bible, the Animal Management, where they had a sample size of millions of horses, and these horses were the horses were required in order to keep the soldiers alive. And the impetus was that, hey, we needed to win this war. And the only way to win the war was to have the horses sound enough to go to battle. And that book is incredible in its knowledge, because they weren't trying to sell a particular saddle or a particular tack. They were just trying to sell keeping the horses sound enough to actually perform. And not just perform for an hour, but perform for 40 miles a day and then go to battle.
I think it's also interesting.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just you see a lot of saddle fitters are linked with brands as well.
Yes, but that's fine.
I just think it's very interesting to see that they also need to be able to critically identify what can and can't work for a horse within that brand that they're marketing.
Yes. And and right now there's a big turf war going on between brand reps. At least in the States, we call them brand reps, where they work for a particular saddle company, and independent fitters, which is something I will address in the symposium. Neither one of them is good or bad. Really, the ones that take the knowledge and use it for the betterment of the horse are the ones that are good, and the ones who don't are bad.
As is ever the case with enthusiastic, passionate horse people, this podcast got a little bit carried away. So we have decided to split it into two parts. You have just finished watching the first part of the interview with Anne Muller and the wonderful saddle fitting guru, Amanda Anderson. We have decided to roll onto our second section. This is for the upcoming International Biomechanics Symposium that is going to be held in May at Kailami Equestrian Park. Remember to go and book your spaces for the demo. These women are fantastic. There are two other wonderful clinicians who will be joining. All of the information is on centerlinecollective.co.za, and we'll be rolling over to our part 2. So please follow the SAEF's YouTube channel for more.